items?
I have a board resolution.
Good.
Yep, I do. So, I know this was voted down last time, but we'll give it another whirl. So I'd like to, I'll just present the shortened version, the abridged version, but I would like to bring up, again, the transparency issue. I don't believe that asking for 4 days' notice to other board members and to the public is exuberant or burdensome on any board member. And I think it's the right thing to do so that people have a chance to look at information, sleep on it, talk to others, gather data to reach their conclusion. So with that being said, I present the resolution that was on the last board agenda to establish a policy concerning the introduction of board resolutions by individual board members where 4 days' notice is mandated.
I'd like to second it, and for the purposes of discussion, please.
Motion and a second. Questions or comments? Roll call.
Oh,
You have a question or comment, John?
that's why I second. I'm sorry. You went a little too fast for me. This was brought up before, and some people voted for it and against it, and I wasn't able to discern the reason that some of our faithful board members voted against it. So I would like to just ask those who voted against it, what was your reasoning? And please try to convince me, because I want to be convinced to do the right thing. So if we don't need a 4-day window, why? How could that hurt us?
I do believe you had a paragraph in there for emergency, could be overridden
There it is.
5-4 also, correct, John?
Correct. At any point in time, the supermajority can override if it's something like this evening where we have to hire teachers before the start of school. But I think Mr. Ritter is asking to the 5 members, so Val, Scotty, Steve, Stephanie, and George, who voted against the 4-day public display, what is the reasoning behind, what is the rationale behind not giving the public 4 days notice?
Well, I can speak to my almost 4 years on the board, but I've seen minority members of the board, majority members of the board submit a resolution the day of a meeting, and I feel like it gave them a voice, and even though it was voted down or it was voted in, and I felt that it was necessary for them to have that voice, because you also have to remember that the president sets the agenda, and I think it's good to give all board members an opportunity to add a resolution.
The board under board policy, it states that board resolutions can be added by any board member. That's not up to the superintendent or up to the president, and that's for that exact reason. That's why that exists. Policy. So where I pulled the 4 days from is under board policy. It states that if you'd like anything on the agenda, it should be submitted to the superintendent or the board president at least 4 days prior. So it's actually already in our board policy. We just don't follow anything because people bring it up under the reports at the end of the meeting with no public input, and then we go and we spend money on the 360 group with nobody receiving any information on it. We buy air conditioner units in the middle of January.
All right, I've heard your side, and I really appreciate Stephanie's side. Could we go on to some of the other board members? What's your rationale as well? By the way, that was very convincing, Stephanie. Thank you.
I agree with Stephanie. It also hobbles board members in an unreasonable fashion. There are lots of times when board members have an issue of importance that they want to raise, and they put it in the form of a motion. It gets seconded, it gets discussed. If it can pass, it passes. So I agree with the issue she raised, and I don't want to artificially restrict board members' rights to raise issues, quite honestly, at any time. But if the issue that is raised is not palatable to the majority of the board members, they can simply vote it down.
But wait a
Is there a
second.
possibility to table a resolution for later discussion if it's brought up at the last moment and
Absolutely.
questions still need to be asked? So there's a,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Neil?
Well, I know
I'd
you're,
like to respond to that, though.
John has the floor.
hold your thought, write it down. And some of the other folks that voted against it, what was your rationale, please?
More or less the same thing. Why handcuff people? If people don't want to vote for it, they don't have to vote for it. They can be tabled, whatever. Sometimes things need to be done.
So I guess my interjection would be, doesn't the public have,
Well, just like that, we can't finish the sentence, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
Because,
You have to hold off.
they can't wait to speak and give it. Go ahead.
but you say that, you say the
I
same
didn't say
exact
you.
thing as the previous two.
You want to take it out?
My question is, does the public not deserve 4 days' notice? And we're talking about handcuffing. If it's something that needs to be passed, it states in the policy that the supermajority can pass any resolution. So it's simply to inform the public. I mean, so many times people come here and there's nothing on the agenda and then it's voted on. To look back at some of these things, it's actually extremely difficult to even find them because they're not on the agenda. They were brought up under board, so you have to look through the minutes of both study sessions and regular board meetings and dig through until individual board members' reports to see when things were passed. And we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars were done in this manner. So,
All right, so
in response to that, I'm so sorry.
that's a valid counter argument. Could you hold your thought, and you're holding your thought, Neil, and Val?
Yes, sir.
May I ask, what was your rationale for,
I feel the same way. If something comes up prior to, comes up afterwards, that we get the board packets and things like that, we can have an executive session, we discuss it, but then it falls flat, so you bring it up in public and you can have discussion there.
very good, thank you. Neil, and then Steph, and then back to Scotty.
Thank you, John.
My point is, I think that there's people hiding behind certain things, and here's my take on it. I'm just going to be blunt. I believe that there's times that board members contact other board members, and not all the board members, and try to formulate some type of coalition of things, and then they try to bring it to the meeting in their board report and wham it on somebody, when the people never even have, the people being the other board members, the people being the actual citizens of our district, do not have the time to even think about it, because I've witnessed it numerous occasions where it came up, and then they said, call to vote. We weren't even trying to discuss it. And it said call to vote immediately. That is just that obviously tells me that there was people, whomever the board members were, it may have been, us 4 here, or us 5, that discussed it beforehand, and the others didn't have an opportunity to even question it, raise a concern about it, think about it. That is not appropriate. I don't care what you say, and I understand that the answer is always, 5 votes wins, and that's what you guys are saying, 5 votes wins. But the real answer is, what their vote is what matters. That's what you want. You want them to stand at that podium and speak. You don't want to vote and get 5 votes. That's not the appropriate thing. That podium right there is the appropriate place. And you are getting rid of that podium by doing what you want to do.
Very good.
Sorry.
Well said.
Neil, thank you for your candor. Now let's go to Steph, and then I want George to speak, and if he can, then back to Scotty.
So the instances that I think of whenever I think of, a board member resolution coming forth on the day of the meeting, I think of Bob Elms in his late start for schools. He felt he needed to have that on the agenda, and for whatever reason he wasn't able to get it on, and it was able to be voted upon. I think of the superintendent, and I do appreciate everything that you've done, Mr. Short, but that came from a board resolution, which I didn't know was going to happen. But, it happened, and all the board members had an equal chance to bring forth the resolution the day of the meeting. So I certainly understand your argument, Neil, and I think that your heart's in the right place. However, I just feel that, as an elected official, you have this right, and all of us have the equal right to bring forth the resolution the day of the meeting.
well, I just want to rebut that real quick. So Mr. Elms, who's in attendance, that example, under this policy, if he wants it on the agenda, he would give it to everyone 4 days in advance. Again, so if we get the board packet on Friday, it could be on for today. I mean, it's not a long period of time. I'm not saying, hey, put this on there 30 days in advance. It has to be on before the study session in order to be voted on. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying 4 days based off of the board policy. As you mentioned with the superintendent, that actually was on prior to the study session, which means that it was on prior to 4 days in advance. So both situations I don't think really call for that. When you're trying to say that board members can't put something on, that's completely false. Under board policy, if you read the board policy under the 0 section, it states the authority for any board member to put something under a board member resolution. That's why we have section G, is resolutions presented by board members. That doesn't have to be approved. We could make it to close down the Gateway School District, and someone could put that on a board member resolution without his approval or without Scotty's approval. So I just think that argument is null and void for the fact that there's already things in place that allow for any board member, whether in the minority or the majority, which I even hate to say because what the hell is the majority and the minority? I mean, aren't we all here for the same reason? So I just think that 4 days is applicable. I don't think there's been one valid argument against it. And I guess I would turn the table to say, the 360 group, what work have they done yet? And why did that have to be brought up under a board member's comments for something that hasn't even been started yet?
All right, there's a specific instance. So let's go to George, and then Scotty, if you would call George in, I'd like to get his 2 cents in as well, please.
Scotty?
George, are you still there?
No.
Yeah, I heard something.
No, you didn't
It's not
vote
coming
against
through.
it.
George, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you though.
Something new? That's scary.
What else did you want to speak, Tom?
Okay, and Mary Beth has a
Okay, you know
thought.
what, Nance, I'm putting him on speakerphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, George.
Okay. Hi, George. I'm going to put you on speakerphone, okay? Because it's not coming through. Okay. Hi, George.
Hey, the situation with Mr. Ritter's comment,
Yes.
I'll answer it as best as I can. How long has this been going on since the school board's been established with this couple days issue being put on the agenda? Has it been just since our board's been on, or has it been for years?
What was the question, George?
How long has this been going on? For years or just the board?
What?
If
This-
they want
Putting
4
things
days.
on the
So-
agenda last minute?
The
George,
seeming.
all I can state is for the past year. So what I did was I looked at the past 2 years and looked at the amount of money spent, which is exuberant over the last year compared to the year previous.
I mean, this stuff hasn't been done before. I came on board 2 years ago.
Not to the extent that I can remember, where we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars during board reports. And I can only speak for the 3 years I've been on the board.
Okay, the only concern I have is if one of my board members have an issue and it cannot make the 30-day notice, or it has to be put on the agenda within a 3 or 4 day period. In my heart, I feel it's okay because if it's that important, and also I feel this wouldn't be on discussion at all if some things were put on the board memo now and they didn't get their way, and that's the reason why we're putting this up as a session right now, because one of our colleagues, were teed off and they didn't get their way, so they're going to try to make a deal out of it. But in my opinion, I don't see anything the matter with it.
Okay, so for the folks at home that weren't able to hear George, he said essentially he wondered whether it's a peculiarity of this individual board that seems to bring things up at the last moment and spring it on other board members, or have all boards previously behaved this way as well. And what was his other point?
I think that was it.
That was it? Okay, Mary Beth, back to you.
That's it.
Well, I always call things like I see them. And I feel that the reason that Chad felt a need to bring up this resolution is really what Neil said, is that, we have a very new board. We're going on 2 years with a lot of turnover, myself included. And there's a lot of things to learn here. There's a lot of policies and procedures. And I was getting highly frustrated personally that we would be coming to board meetings and I would be blindsided by resolutions that weren't even presented during the board resolutions part of the agenda, but during the closing remarks. So you mentioned things that you think of. The things that I think of were the Teamsters bonus of $250 of taxpayer money voted on during a closing remark after the community has left and wasn't even here to comment it, and it was the same night that we voted on the contract. I think about an employee specifically named to get a raise. I think about the unbudgeted money that we spent for things that weren't emergencies, the tree removal and the brush clearing. Yes, that stuff looks great, but there's no reason that it couldn't have been given 4 days' notice and allowed public input. Same with the ACs. I mean, you and I had a candid conversation, as I do with pretty much anybody who I speak with. When you do things like that at a last minute and you take your fellow colleagues that you're supposed to respect and work together with, it breaks down the trust. So then we have a trust issue between board members, and when board members don't trust each other, that's negatively affects the school and the community. Because we are here to serve the school district, the taxpayers, the students, the faculty, the employees, and when we don't have trust between us, that damages everybody. So I don't think it's too much to ask that we, A, follow our board policies, B, have the responsibility to learn what they are. I mean, it is my job as an elected official to know the Robert's Rules of Order, to learn our school board policies, and to try the best that I can to follow them. And if I'm not following them, then I will take somebody who's been on the board longer than myself, like Steve or Stephanie, to tell me, you did something wrong, that's not the way we do it, and you have policies and procedures in place for a reason. So when we start to make up our own policy and procedures and we don't keep each other in check, I think it's bad for everybody. So I totally support Chad's resolution because I think any type of transparency is good for the community and it's good for everybody. And if this board wants to function as a team and function effectively, we all need to trust each other and we need to communicate with each other, not hide things from each other or bring them up at the last minute and try to sneak something past one another.
All right, I think I do have 2 more sentences to add into this and then back to you for the actual vote. Like the rest of us, I do want to do my level best to vote correctly on issues that are brought up. I recognize that some of them need to be brought up at the last moment. I feel blindsided sometimes by some of these that come up at the last moment. And so there are 2 ways to handle it. One is with a formal resolution as proposed by Mr. Studenborg. The other way is through a gentleman's agreement. That is, if you have something that's going to be, controversial and it might offend or blindside some of your fellow board members, find a different way to bring it up. Okay? So even if this vote fails, we're still free to be gentlemen. Thank you.
Or women.
We have a roll call, please.
Gentlemen, it's the royal gentleman.
You're the one?
No, I wanted to say I think your heart's in the right place too, Neil.
Well, I just need people's brains in here.
And the vote.
The vote.
Roll call, please.
Mr. O'Donnell.
No.
Mr. Ritter.
Aye.
Mr. Stubenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Warning.
No.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Mrs. Byrne.
No.
Mrs. Cerrucci.
Yes.
Mr. Lapsevich.
Okay, George. Okay, George, hello.
Your vote?
Yeah, we voted.
We're not vote,
I
it's a,
vote. Yeah, I vote no.
And Mr. Nola.
Aye.
Motion fails.